You know, I've been seeing in the comment section lately of this recent series of Gen X type videos that I've been doing in this series. And there's been some comments, not tons, but enough to take notice and take a little bit of offense to, which is okay. And that's, well, Gen X are the ones that raised soft kids. Gen X are the ones who raised snowflakes. Gen X is the one that didn't teach the kids the way that you were raised. And I've been seeing this. And again, it does hit a nerve a little bit because if you're Gen X like me, you're thinking, wait a minute, we were the last generation of tough, independent, figure it out yourself kids. So did we supposedly raise a generation that's the complete opposite? Did we mess up? Or did something way bigger happen that nobody is talking about? Let's break this down because the answer is not what people think. Stick around. Let's talk about it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am Rad, back with another video, again in the series of some Gen X topics. If you're new to the channel, this isn't what we always talk about here. I am a big nostalgia person. A lot of my videos, if you go back into my history, are about 80s toys, 70s technology, lots of different stuff like that. So if that's stuff that you do like, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, sharing it out. Not just for the Gen X community, but for the younger generations, especially the younger Gen Z right now, who are adopting a lot of the ways of Gen X when it comes to technology and low tech, analog versus digital and whatnot. But in today's video, it's kind of once again based off of the comments that get fed from some of my past videos. And again, the comment sections are always fun. You have the ones that agree, you have the ones that somewhat agree, then you have the ones where you can clearly tell they did not watch the entirety of the video and then leave a really weird or dumb comment. And then the other ones who just seem to be really, really offended, but yet watched my video instead of clicking back. And then there's those that dislike the video, and then you can normally match up the dislike or the downvote with the comment, which I was talking to a buddy of mine, kind of a little off topic. He's like, who the hell dislikes videos? I can honestly say that I've never disliked a video on YouTube. And even if it's the complete opposite of what I believe or what I like, sometimes I'll watch it and I'm like, okay, I back out of it. But it is interesting. I said, well, man, it's the internet and people do a lot of, funny things. So this video pops up. If this video pops up in your feed, it's because it's a continuation of Gen X. So just so you know, guys, those of you that don't want to see Gen X content and wonder why you keep getting Gen X content, it's because you probably watched a video about Gen X. You probably commented on a video about Gen X, whether it's a negative comment. And then the algorithm in YouTube will feed you more Gen X content. So if you don't want to see Gen X content, then don't comment on Gen X content and don't watch the Gen X content because you will get more Gen X content. So it's a little sidebar, clearing the air a little bit for y'all. So in my intro, I talked about these comments that are in the comment section about Gen X raising our kids. Now, in all full transparency, I have 3 children. One is a younger millennial, born in 1993, and the other 2 are Gen Z. One's the older Gen Z from 2003, and the other, that if y'all followed me for a while on my channel, my son Roth, he is younger Gen Z, born in 2009. Those 2 Gen Zs are similar in a lot of ways, but vastly different in a lot of ways. And they're great aspects. So for the record, let me make sure those of you who won't watch more than a minute of this video and then leave a comment below, well, I didn't raise my kids that way. If you do, I'm going to timestamp this into the comments so you can see that I'm answering your question and you didn't watch the video. There are bad parents everywhere. There have been bad parents since the history of time. I'm not saying you were a bad parent. I'm not saying you didn't raise your children right. But in generalities, not all boomers were bad parents. There were bad parents that were boomers. There were bad parents that were the silent generation. There are bad parents that are millennials. And there's probably older Gen Zs now that are parents, and they're probably bad. Okay? There are bad parents. So this is in no way a reflection on your parenting. But in general, these things are backed by lots of data now to show that what I'm about to talk about actually does exist. So, but I can admit that I have made my mistakes as a parent. And a lot of what we're going to go into the video, I have done, right? Inadvertently, which is what we're going to go into. So, little disclaimer, don't get butthurt about it. If you're offended by it, then maybe it strikes a nerve. So that's all I'm saying. If you feel the need to go and put a negative comment about how you were the greatest parent in the world, then it obviously strikes a nerve somewhere. I can admit that I made mistakes with all three of my children, and but overall, I'm a great dad, and they'll tell you that. So, but that doesn't mean I'm perfect. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So here's the argument that people were making. Essentially, Gen X raised Millennials and Gen Z, which, as I said, I just did. And those are the generations that are supposedly more sensitive, more anxious, less independent, and more easily offended. Now, I will note that the younger millennials, based on some of the comments, and then you look at their profiles, they're the ones that seem most easily offended. Those people in their early 30s, mid 30s, wow, easily offended. So the conclusion is based on their comments, is that Gen X failed as parents. But here's the problem. The argument assumes that kids today grew up in the same world we did. And that's completely false. The world that they grew up in was completely different than the world we grew up in. And that's by no fault of our own. So let's rewind and remind people about how Gen X grew up. Our childhoods looked pretty much like this. We were outside all day. Your parents didn't know your parents didn't know where you were at. We didn't have cell phones. Yes, we drank from the water hose just because if we went in, our parents would probably put us to work to do something. So we drank from the water hose, not because our parents wouldn't let us in. Some wouldn't. But we drank from the water hose because we did not want to go in and then be given a chore list. So you handled your own problems and you figured things out on your own. As I've mentioned in previous videos, we weren't parented, we were managed, barely. So what did that create? It created independence, resilience, thick skin, and problem solving. But here's the key to that, because a lot of people in the comments seem to think that Gen X, now that we are speaking up, we're standing on these pedestals saying that we're the greatest generation ever. What you don't understand is that it was the environment during the 70s and 80s that forced those traits. It wasn't just parenting, it was the world. It was the way the world was at that time. So now let's talk about us as parents. Gen X as parents, because yes, things did change. What did change? Gen X parents, you know what? I spent more time with my kids. I got involved with my kids. I was more proactive with my kids, and I paid more attention to safety. That's not a negative, and those alone don't create snowflake kids. Most times we grow up and we're like, I'm not going to be the way that my parents were. And that's most Gen X people. However, I wanted to spend more time with my kids. I wanted to be involved and be there for their games. Although my mom, when I played soccer, I didn't play a lot of sports, but when I did, she was there. So I wasn't like alone all the time. And I definitely, we helicoptered. I'm not sure who coined that term, but you know what? It's effective. Now, was I all up on my kids? I let them have their space, their time to go out and play, ride their bikes and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, the times were different to where you're not going to just let your kid do what we did and go 2 miles down the road to a mall with no way to contact them. So again, you can say that made our parents bad for that, but that's just the way it was. That was the way the world was at that time. So of course we say that, yeah, we did those things. And why did we do those things? Because we didn't want our kids to grow up the way that we were in certain ways, right? I tried to instill in my kids a lot of what I learned growing up, and I still do to this day. But we said, you know what? I'm gonna be there for my kids. I'm gonna protect my kids, and I'm gonna guide my kids. And honestly, that's not failure. That's improvement. But here's where things get interesting. And this is where you really need to pay attention. So to those people out there that say Gen X is the one that raised woke, weak, snowflake people, we protected our kids from the real world. It's kind of a tongue twister for me. We had no idea how to protect them from the digital world because it didn't exist when we were kids. Think about this. We understood stranger danger, neighborhood risks, and physical safety, but we did not understand social media, online bullying, algorithm manipulation, and constant comparison. We were prepared for the world that we grew up in, not for the world that they grew up in. And this seems to be the part that nobody wants to admit, is that the biggest shift in childhood in human history happened between the late 1990s into the early 2010s. So let's talk about what changed. The internet became mainstream. Smartphones arrived, social media exploded, and kids went from playing outside to living online. Now, some of y'all might say, well, that's your fault. And in a way, no, it's not, right? Because again, this was new to us. We didn't understand. See, a lot of the ways that Gen X looks at things is we looked at the internet as something positive because we were used to going to the library to look up microfiche or pull books, or we would go to the stand for our nightstand or bookshelf for an encyclopedia to look up stuff. So we looked at it as a way to gather information because, as I've said before in previous videos, Gen X are contrarians. We research. We naturally want to know the answers. So we looked at the internet as something, wow, we can get more information at a faster pace. So here's one of the stark differences is that a Gen X childhood, we had little comparison. Your world was your town, or your world was your school. A Gen Z childhood is unlimited comparison. Your world, or I'd say their world, is the entire internet. So we grew up bullying or gotten bullied, right? I got bullied, and I'm glad I did. It made me tougher, right? But I got called names, and if I can find the picture, I'll throw it up. This is what a fat kid was in the 80s, right? Not compared to what a fat kid is today. And I got ripped for it. But I got ripped for it by the 100 people that I went to school with. That was it. And that was tough enough on its own. I got ripped by 100 people that called me names, made fun of me, or whatever. Just 100 people. Again, my world was my town. I go to another town, I moved to a different town, looked a little bit different. I was a new me, and that was my new world now. But kids today, because of the technology, it changes everything. Now kids are constantly exposed to other people's perfect lives, curated content, opinions from millions of strangers that don't mean a damn thing, and nonstop validation or rejection. That didn't exist for us. Not even close. Teen sadness and depression skyrocketed after 2010, and especially after COVID. Anxiety rates are significantly higher in Gen Z, and social media is strongly linked to low self-esteem, loneliness, and increased stress. And here's the key detail with that. The timeline matches exactly with smartphones and social media, not parenting styles. It matches perfectly with technology. So let's answer the question honestly. Did Gen X mess up their kids? Now remember, if you're a bad parent, you're a bad parent, and you messed up your kids for being a bad parent. If you were a good parent and you're a Gen X parent, did you mess up your kids because you were Gen X? No. But did we as Gen Xers fully understand what our kids were facing? And the answer to that is also no. How could we? There wasn't a blueprint. We were the first parents with kids in the digital world. Gen X didn't raise weak kids. We raised the first generations of kids growing up in a completely new world. A world with constant comparison, constant connection, and constant pressure. And we were trying to parent it without ever experiencing it for ourselves. So instead of blaming Gen X, maybe the real question is, what does it take to raise strong kids in a world that never turns off? The way I would look at it is that you parents out there that are young millennials or older Gen Zs that have a freaking iPad or a smartphone in your 2-year-old's hand, now knowing all of the data that's available for you on this thing called the internet for you to research and find out about how you're giving your own children brain rot, how you're giving your own children anxiety. See, we didn't know those things. Did that happen with some of our kids? Yes. But those same kids, my oldest son grew up with most of the same stuff I did. He knows what a rotary phone is. He knows what dial-up internet is. He knows all of those things. He knows what a flip phone is, right? He knows what a brick phone is. And my 2 younger kids know that because I teach them those things. Okay? So the kids today, or the parents today that are the younger ones, that are those 30-year-olds or those younger 21-year-olds, I say the burden's on you because you know now from the people who created the social media companies, in their own words on TED Talks and in other things online, how they talked about how it damages your kid's growth, it damages your kid's brain function. So, excuse the little rant, but I would say it's on you a lot more now than it was on us. Of course, let me know in the comments, as y'all always do. Do you think Gen X got it right, or do you agree with me that we raised kids in a world we just didn't understand yet? We didn't recognize it. And what do you think, if you're Gen X, what do you think that we did right? Comment below and let me know. As always, if you stuck around to the end, I do appreciate you. Like, subscribe, comment, share the video out, and I'll catch you on the next video. Y'all take care.